The howling wind rattled the windows of Maple Street Diner. Emily Brooks wiped down the counter for the 5th time that hour. Outside, Burlington, Vermont had vanished under a curtain of white, the worst blizzard in decades. The quaint town had become an Arctic wasteland. Her last customers had left hours ago, but Emily couldn't bring herself to close early. The diner was her life now, all that remained of her dreams. "Another cup, hun?" She smiled at the elderly gentleman nursing a coffee in the corner booth. Arthur Bennett, her daily regular, walked 3 blocks every day, blizzard or not, for her homemade pie and a listening ear. "Better not," he chuckled. "Maggie will have my hide if my blood pressure spikes again." He slid a 20 across the table. "You should close up, Emily. This storm's getting worse by the minute." Emily smiled, shaking her head. "I'll stay open a bit longer. Some folks might need shelter." As if summoned by her words, the door burst open, a gust of snow and frigid air sweeping in. Emily turned, expecting the usual plow driver. But instead, an elderly woman stumbled through the entrance, her coat far too thin, silver hair dusted with snowflakes, face pale from the cold. "Oh my goodness!" Emily rushed forward, catching her as she swayed. "Are you all right?" I got lost," the woman murmured, her voice trembling. "My taxi dropped me off. Wrong street. I can't find my son's address. Come on, let's get you warm." Emily guided her to the nearest booth. "Arthur, could you turn up the heat? I'll get some hot tea." Within minutes, Emily had wrapped the woman in an emergency blanket, placing a steaming mug of chamomile tea between her trembling hands. "Thank you, dear," the woman said softly, color slowly returning to her cheeks. "I'm Evelyn Whitaker." "Emily Brooks," Emily replied with a kind smile. "You picked a rough day to get lost in Burlington," she said, sliding into the booth across from her. "Where were you headed? Maybe I can help." Evelyn sipped her tea, hands still shaking. "My son lives here. I haven't seen him in 5 years. I thought it was time to make amends." Something in her voice, regret, longing, hope, stirred something deep in Emily. She knew about broken relationships and how much courage it took to try and mend them. "Do you have his address? When the road's clear, I can call someone to drive you there." Evelyn fumbled in her purse, pulling out a small slip of paper. "Lakeside Manor, apartment 1201. Emily's eyebrows rose. Lakeside Manor, the most exclusive address in Burlington, a sleek glass tower overlooking Lake Champlain. Whoever Evelyn's son was, he wasn't hurting for money. "That's quite a ways from here," Emily said gently, "and the roads to that part of town might be closed until tomorrow." Evelyn's shoulders slumped. "I should have called him first, but I wanted to surprise him." A shadow crossed her face. "He's always been so busy with his work. I thought if I just showed up." "You can wait here as long as you need," Emily said softly. "The diner's not much, but it's warm." Arthur rose from his booth, buttoning his coat. "I better head home before my street turns into a glacier. You ladies stay safe." He nodded to Evelyn. "You're in good hands with our Emily. Best heart in Burlington." After he left, Emily made fresh coffee, then soup for Evelyn. The woman's eyes followed her, studying her with quiet gratitude. "You own this place?" Evelyn asked. Emily laughed lightly. "Just manage it, though. Sometimes I pretend it's mine." She ladled steaming chicken noodle soup into a bowl. "I always wanted my own restaurant." "It's charming," Evelyn said, glancing around. The diner had seen better days, but Emily kept it spotless, the red. Booths gleaming, chrome fixtures shining. "It pays the bills," Emily replied, setting the bowl before her. "And I like the people. Everyone has a story." Evelyn's sharp blue eyes lifted. "And what's your story, dear? A smart, kind young woman like you, shouldn't you be running your own place by now?" Emily's smile faltered just slightly. "Life took some unexpected turns." She smoothed her apron, avoiding Evelyn's gaze. "But that's ancient history. Eat before it gets cold." As the afternoon wore on, The storm intensified. Emily called her boss, explaining she was staying open as emergency shelter, then made up a makeshift bed for Evelyn in the back office. The older woman was exhausted, the journey and cold taking their toll. "I should call my son," Evelyn murmured as Emily helped her to the small couch. "He'll be worried if he checks his security cameras and sees I've arrived but not made it to his building." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Security cameras? Grant is cautious about his privacy," Evelyn explained. "He has the building notify him of visitors." Emily handed her the diner's phone. "Call him. Let him know you're safe." Evelyn dialed. After several rings, she sighed. Voicemail again. She left a brief message, then handed back the phone. "He's probably in a meeting. Grant practically lives at his office." "What does he do?" Emily asked. "He runs Whitaker Innovations," Evelyn said proudly. "Created some software that changed everything, apparently." Emily froze. Whitaker Innovations, one of the largest tech firms in the Northeast. Its CEO, Grant Whitaker, was infamous for his ruthless acquisitions and unrelenting leadership. She'd seen his face in countless business articles, sharp angles, blue eyes, never smiling. "Your son is Grant Whitaker?" she asked, unable to hide her surprise. Evelyn nodded, wrapping the blanket tighter. "You've heard of him?" "Everyone in Vermont has," Emily replied carefully. She didn't add the whispers ruthless, cold-hearted, impossible to work for. "Whatever you've heard," Evelyn said softly, "after his father died, something changed. He built walls, pushed people away, even me." Her eyes grew distant. "Especially me." Emily felt a pang of sympathy. Whatever Grant Whitaker was now, he had once been someone's little boy, someone whose mother still braved a blizzard to make things right. "Rest now," Emily said gently. "I'll be right outside if you need anything." Evelyn drifted off to sleep. Emily returned to the silent diner. Snow fell in thick, hypnotic sheets, piling high against the windows. She should have been frightened, the storm, the isolation, but instead, she felt a strange calm. For the first time in years, she had nowhere to be. No one demanding her time, just an empty diner, a sleeping woman, and the quiet hush of snow blanketing the world. Emily was wiping down the last table when headlights cut through the swirling snow outside. A massive black SUV pulled up to the curb, its tires crunching through the heavy drifts. A tall figure emerged, battling against the wind as he made his way toward the diner's entrance. The door swung open, and Emily found herself face to face with the last person she expected to see that night. Grant Whitaker stood in her doorway, snowflakes melting in his dark hair, his expensive coat dusted with white. His face, so familiar from news photos, was even more striking in person, all sharp angles and focus. Blue eyes, the exact shade of Evelyn's. "I'm looking for Evelyn Whitaker," he said without preamble. His deep voice clipped and controlled. "She left a message saying she was here." Emily straightened, meeting Grant Whitaker's intense gaze with practiced calm. 5 years of managing a diner had taught her how to handle difficult customers, and this man, she suspected, defined the word difficult. "Mr. Whitaker," she said evenly, "your mother is resting in my office." She was half frozen when she arrived. Something flickered in his eyes, concern perhaps, but it vanished so quickly. Emily wasn't sure she'd seen it at all. "Take me to her." "Not a request, a command." Emily crossed her arms. "She's sleeping." The cold and stress exhausted her. "I didn't drive through a blizzard to be told I can't see my own mother," he said, voice low and level, the kind of tone that made people move out of his way. "And I didn't risk staying open through this storm just to have someone barge in and disturb an elderly woman who needs rest," Emily replied, tone matching his perfectly. "She's safe, she's warm, she'll be thrilled to see you when she wakes." For a moment, they stood locked in silent confrontation, two wills meeting head-on in the flickering diner light. Emily could practically see the wheels turning behind those piercing blue eyes, calculating the fastest way to get what he wanted. But then, To her surprise, Grant exhaled slowly and nodded once. "Fine. May I at least look in on her?" "Of course," Emily said, softening slightly. She led him through the diner to the small back office. "Quietly, please." Grant followed, his footsteps soundless despite his size. Emily opened the door just enough for him to see Evelyn sleeping peacefully on the couch, wrapped in blankets. Color returned to her cheeks. "She was trying to surprise you," Emily whispered. "Got lost in the storm. Your address was in her purse." Grant studied his mother's face, his expression unreadable. "She didn't tell me she was coming." "Families are complicated," Emily replied simply, closing the door. Back in the diner, she gestured to a booth. "Coffee? You look like you could use some warmth too." He seemed about to refuse, then glanced out at the storm raging beyond the glass. "Thank you," he said finally. Emily poured 2 cups, sliding one across the table as she sat opposite him. She watched as he removed his expensive wool coat, revealing a charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than she made in 3 months. "How did you find her?" Grant asked, after taking a sip of coffee and raising an eyebrow, almost impressed by the taste. "She stumbled in half-frozen," Emily said, hands wrapped around her mug. "Said her taxi dropped her at the wrong address. She mentioned wanting to make amends." Grant's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. "My mother excels at dramatic gestures." "Braving a blizzard at her age goes beyond dramatic," Emily observed. "Seems more like determination." "You don't know anything about our situation," he said sharply. "True," Emily replied, calm but firm. "But I know she could have died out there trying to find you. That says something." Grant studied her, curiosity breaking through his polished reserve. Most people tiptoed around him, intimidated by his reputation or dazzled by his wealth. But this diner manager spoke to him like an equal, like his title meant nothing. "Do you know who I am?" he asked suddenly. Emily couldn't help a small, amused smile. "Is that the question you ask everyone you meet?" For a split second, he looked almost startled. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth twitched. "Only the ones who aren't impressed by me. I'm impressed by people who earn respect, not people who demand it," she said, taking a sip of coffee. "But yes, your mother mentioned you run Whitaker Innovations. And you're Emily Brooks," Grant replied, glancing around the spotless but aging diner. "You manage this place." "That's right," she said simply, tone making it clear the subject was closed. Grant leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly, as if piecing together a puzzle. There was something about her, something that didn't fit the setting. Her hands, though marked by work, carried the quiet refinement of someone not born to it. Her speech was precise, her composure unshakable, and she hadn't flinched once under his scrutiny. "How long have you worked here?" he asked casually. "Long enough to know when someone's interrogating me," she replied dryly. "Why the interest in my employment history, Mr. Whitaker?" "Grant," he corrected automatically. "And I'm curious about the woman who saved my mother from freezing to death." The howling wind rattled the windows again, emphasizing the storm's fury. Emily glanced at her watch. "The roads are getting worse. You might be stuck here for the night too." He frowned, pulling out his phone. "I have a driver waiting. Even 4-wheel drive has limits in this weather," she said evenly. "The plows have stopped running until morning." He tapped the screen, his frown deepening. "You're right. Routes to Lakeside are closed." Emily smiled faintly. "Welcome to my impromptu storm shelter, then." She stood, gathering their empty mugs. "There's a staff room upstairs with a cot. Not up to your usual standards, I'm sure, but it's clean and warm." Grant watched her move behind the counter, efficient, focused, graceful. Every motion purposeful. She worked like someone who'd long ago learned to rely only on herself. "How did you end up here?" he asked finally. "Managing a diner in Burlington doesn't seem like your—" "My what?" she challenged, turning toward him. "Original career path," he finished carefully. Her hand paused briefly on the counter. Life has a way of changing our paths when we least expect it. Before he could respond, a sharp crack of thunder shook the building and the lights flickered violently, then went out. "Perfect," Emily muttered. She moved confidently through the dark, retrieving a flashlight from under the counter. The beam illuminated her face from below. Backup generator should kick in for essential systems, but the main lights will stay out until power's restored. "Do you need help?" Grant asked, already removing his suit jacket. Emily's flashlight beam caught his movement. Well, the CEO knows how to roll up his sleeves. "I wasn't born in a boardroom, Miss Brooks," he replied dryly. "Could have fooled me," she murmured. "Check the breaker panel by the back door while I find candles." 15 minutes later, they'd built a warm pocket of light in the middle of the diner. The gas stove still worked, casting a soft, golden glow across the room. Emily had lit candles and hurricane lamps, turning the humble space into something almost magical. Grant returned from checking on Evelyn, still sleeping soundly. "Good," Emily said, handing him a steaming mug of fresh coffee. "The generator's running the heaters in the office and staff room. It'll be cold, but not freezing." Their fingers brushed as he took the cup, and Emily felt an unexpected jolt of awareness. In the candlelight, Grant Whitaker looked less like the ruthless businessman she'd seen in headlines and more like a man with striking bone structure and eyes that reflected firelight like deep blue glass. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for taking care of my mother." The sincerity in his voice caught Emily off guard. Anyone would have done the same. "No, they wouldn't," he said, gaze steady. "Most people would have called emergency services and washed their hands of it. You gave her your office, made her soup, tucked her in like she was family." Emily looked away, uncomfortable under his scrutiny. "I like your mother," she murmured. "She reminds me of my grandmother." Grant studied her thoughtfully. "Who were you before this, Emily Brooks? Before diners and soup and small-town hospitality?" The question hung between them. Emily's expression closed off, her posture subtly shifting. "Someone who learned the hard way that not all successful men have integrity," she said quietly. Then, with measured calm, "Now, if you'll excuse me, I should check our supplies. It might be a long night." As she turned away, Grant caught her wrist gently. The touch sent another current through her, sharp, electric, unexpected. "I've offended you," he said softly, releasing her when she stiffened. "That wasn't my intention." Emily looked down at her wrist, then back at him. In the flickering light, his expression was sincere. "No offense taken," she said evenly. "But some stories aren't meant to be shared with strangers during power outages. We're hardly strangers now," Grant countered. "You've seen my mother in her vulnerabilities, and I've seen—" He hesitated. "Something." "What?" Emily asked quietly. "What exactly do you think you've seen, Mr. Whitaker?" "Someone hiding," he said simply. "Someone too intelligent, too capable to be just managing a roadside diner." The accuracy of his words sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Evelyn Whitaker awoke, disoriented, blinking at the unfamiliar ceiling. The events of the day slowly returned: the taxi, the blinding snow, the kind young woman at the diner. She sat up carefully, her joints protesting. "You're awake," came a deep, familiar voice. Evelyn turned to see her son sitting beside her, his features softened in the dim emergency lighting. "Grant," she breathed, tears springing to her eyes. "You came." "Of course I came," he said quietly. "You left me a voicemail saying you were stranded in a blizzard." His tone was measured, but the concern beneath it was unmistakable. "I wanted to surprise you for your birthday," she said, smiling through tears. She reached for his hand, half expecting him to pull away as he always did. To her surprise, he didn't. "My birthday isn't for 3 days," he said, but without the coldness she'd grown used to. "I know," Evelyn replied softly. "I thought we might need time to talk before celebrating." "I've missed you, Grant." Something flickered in his eyes, a flash of vulnerability, quickly shuttered behind practiced control. "The roads are closed," he said instead. "We'll have to stay here tonight. The manager has been very accommodating." "Emily," Evelyn smiled. "She's a remarkable young woman, isn't she? So capable, reminds me of myself at that age." Grant's expression shifted subtly. "There's something unusual about her. She doesn't fit here." "Not everyone belongs where life has placed them," Evelyn replied softly. "You taught me that." Before he could respond, the office door opened. Emily appeared with a tray in her hands, her smile warm. "I thought I heard voices." "How are you feeling, Evelyn?" "Much better, dear," the older woman said. "And so happy to see my son." Grant stood politely. "You've been very kind to my mother," he said. "What do we owe you for your trouble?" Emily's expression cooled instantly. "Nothing. Contrary to what you might believe, Mr. Whitaker, not everything has a price tag." Evelyn looked between them, sensing the tension. "Emily, please call him Grant. And Grant, stop trying to throw money at every situation." Emily suppressed a small smile at Evelyn's directness. "It's fine. Your son and I have already established our differing perspectives." "Have we?" Grant asked, one eyebrow raised. "I thought we were just getting acquainted." "Semantics," Emily said lightly. "Evelyn, the bathroom is down the hall if you need it. The power's out, but we've got emergency lighting and heat. Thank you, dear." Evelyn's sharp eyes hadn't missed the charged air between them. "Perhaps you could show Grant where he'll be sleeping while I freshen up." Emily nodded, though her expression suggested she'd rather show him the door. "This way, Mr. Whitaker." She led him upstairs to a small plain room, a cot, a desk, a mini-fridge. "Staff break room," she explained. "Not exactly the penthouse, but it's the best I can offer." Grant surveyed the humble space. "And where will you sleep?" "I'll take one of the booths downstairs. I want to stay near the entrance in case anyone else needs shelter." He frowned. "Take the cot. I'll sleep in a booth. I'm not giving the CEO of Whitaker Innovations a backache on my watch," she shot back dryly. "The last thing I need is a lawsuit because you couldn't code properly after sleeping on vinyl upholstery." Despite himself, Grant's lips twitched. "Is that your professional assessment?" "Just practical risk management." She turned to leave, but he stepped into her path. "Why do I get the feeling you're trying to avoid being alone with me?" he asked, voice low. Emily met his gaze, unflinching. "Because you're used to women seeking your company, not avoiding it." "Touché." He smiled, then a genuine, disarming smile that transformed his features from merely handsome to devastating. "But that doesn't answer my question. I have a diner to manage during a power outage and a blizzard. Entertaining you isn't on my priority list." "Entertaining me?" Grant echoed, stepping closer. "Is that what you think I want, entertainment?" Emily refused to back away, though the small room suddenly felt smaller. The air between them grew taut. "I think you're a man used to getting what he wants," she said quietly. "And right now, you want to solve the puzzle I apparently represent. But I'm not interested in being analyzed or acquired, Mr. Whitaker." "Grant," he corrected again, softer this time. "Grant," she repeated, meeting his eyes. "Now, if you'll excuse me." A violent gust of wind slammed against the building. The floorboards creaked, and Emily instinctively reached out to steady herself, her hand landing against his chest. For a heartbeat, they both froze. Through the fine fabric of his shirt, she could feel his heartbeat fast, like hers. She became acutely aware of his warmth, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way the storm howled outside, but the world inside went still. She pulled back first, clearing her throat. "I should check the generator." Downstairs, Emily found Evelyn arranging blankets in one of the booths. "You don't have to do that," Emily protested. "Nonsense," Evelyn said briskly. "I'm not an invalid. Besides, it gives me something to do while you and my son circle each other like wary cats." Emily felt heat rise to her cheeks. I don't know what you mean. Of course you don't. Evelyn's smile was knowing. He's difficult, my Grant. Life made him that way. But there's a good heart under all that armor. Evelyn, whatever you think you saw between your son and me, I assure you it's nothing. We're strangers trapped by a storm, that's all. Fate, Evelyn said softly, eyes glinting, has interesting methods. Now tell me, Emily, what brought you to this little diner? Emily busied herself adjusting candles. It's not an exciting story. I disagree, came Grant's voice as he descended the stairs. I think it's probably very exciting. Emily shot him a warning glance. Your mother needs rest, not my life history. Actually, Evelyn interjected with perfect timing, what I need is food. I'm starving. Grateful for the interruption, Emily turned toward the kitchen. I can make sandwiches. The gas stove still works if you'd prefer something hot. Allow me to help, Grant offered, following her before she could object. In the kitchen, Emily pulled ingredients from the refrigerator. Make yourself useful, slice the bread. To her surprise, Grant rolled up his sleeves and did as told, cutting even slices with surprising skill. You've done that before, she observed. I worked in a deli through college. At her startled look, he added, Did you think I was born a CEO? Honestly, yes. Grant laughed, a rich, genuine sound that transformed his whole face. My father was a high school science teacher. My mother was a nurse. I grew up in a 2-bedroom house in Rochester and worked every summer from 16 onward. Emily handed him tomatoes to slice. So how did you become? She gestured vaguely at his tailored shirt and expensive watch. That? The heartless corporate titan? He teased dryly. Your words, not mine. I created an algorithm that revolutionized supply chain management while still in grad school. Built a company around it. Made some good decisions, and some brutal ones. The rest is business history. And somewhere along the way, you stopped speaking to your mother, Emily said softly. Grant's hands stilled. That's a complicated situation. Family usually is, Emily replied, stirring a pot of soup on the stove. You're not close with yours? He asked gently, stepping beside her. My parents died when I was in college. Car accident. I'm sorry, he said simply, and meant it. It was a long time ago. She reached past him for bowls, her arm brushing his, and again, that awareness flared between them. And after college? Grant asked quietly. Where did Emily Brooks go before she arrived at this diner? Bowls with precision. New York finance, she said. It didn't work out. Wall Street. Does it matter? She asked lightly, placing the bowls on a tray. That life's behind me now. It matters, Grant said softly, because you're running from something. And whatever it is, forced someone with your intelligence and education to hide in a small-town diner. Emily turned to face him, her composure slipping for the first time. Not everyone who steps away from corporate America is running, she said firmly. Some of us simply realize that success, by those standards, comes at too high a price. The raw honesty in her voice silenced him. For a moment, they stood facing each other in the dim kitchen, the storm raging outside, and something equally powerful building within. Who hurt you, Emily? Grant asked softly. Who made you walk away? Her laugh was soft, bitter. The better question is, who didn't? Before he could respond, the back door burst open, a blast of freezing air sweeping through the kitchen. Emily whirled around. A man staggered in from the storm, snow clinging to his expensive overcoat. Thank God, the newcomer exclaimed, stamping his feet. I thought I'd freeze to death out there. Grant stiffened beside her. Damon, he said flatly, what are you doing here? The man looked up, recognition flashing across his face, followed by something darker. Emily Brooks, he said, his voice tightening. Well, this is unexpected. Emily went perfectly still, her face drained of color. Damon Caldwell, she whispered, of all the diners, in all the storms. Grant looked between them, his analytical mind racing. You two know each other. It wasn't a question. Damon smiled too quickly. Ancient history. Miss Brooks once worked at my investment firm. He extended his hand. Small world, isn't it? Emily stared at the self, hand as if it were a snake. Very small, she said coolly, and getting smaller by the minute. The air between the three of them thickened, heavy with tension and unspoken history. The air inside the diner froze colder than the blizzard outside. Grant's gaze flicked from Damon Caldwell to Emily Brooks, reading every shift in their expressions. I wasn't aware you two were acquainted, he said evenly. Damon laughed, the sound tight and hollow. We worked together once, years ago, didn't we, Emily? Her tone was razor sharp. You mean before your firm's creative accounting nearly ruined my career? Grant's eyes narrowed. Explain. Damon raised his hands lightly. Now, let's not dig up old ghosts. But Emily's voice cut through him, calm, deliberate, each word slicing clean. I was a financial analyst at Caldwell and Stone. I found discrepancies in our investment records, money flowing through shell companies, off-books accounts, when I reported it to compliance. She looked directly at Damon. Someone leaked my name. Within a week, my badge was deactivated, my reputation shredded. They called it insubordination. Grant turned toward Damon, his expression unreadable, yet his jaw tightened. Damon tried to laugh again. She was a junior analyst. She misunderstood what she saw. No, Emily said quietly. I understood perfectly. The storm howled outside, as if echoing the tension building inside. Grant leaned forward, his voice low. Are you saying you were fired for uncovering fraud? I'm saying, Emily replied, that certain people were too powerful to touch, and I was expendable. Silence. Evelyn appeared from the hallway, wrapped in her shawl. Everything all right? Just business history, Damon said smoothly, that polished charm sliding back into place. Though it seems my past employee still holds a grudge, Emily folded of her arms, the kind of grudge that comes from telling the truth. Grant stood slowly. Why are you here, Damon? I was on my way to meet you, Damon answered, brushing snow from his coat. I came straight from the airport. I thought we could finalize the Nortec deal before Monday's deadline. Nortec? Evelyn frowned. The merger you said might affect hundreds of jobs? Grant nodded slightly. It's supposed to secure our foothold in biotech. Emily's brow furrowed. You're merging with Nortec. Damon's firm is backing that deal. Grant turned to her sharply. You know something about it? Her voice dropped to a near whisper. I know that any deal Damon Caldwell touches leaves a trail of smoke behind. Damon's easy smile faltered. That's a serious accusation, Emily. I'm not accusing, she said. I'm remembering. Grant's gaze locked on Damon. Is there something I should know about this merger? Only that it'll double Whitaker Innovations' market value. Damon replied smoothly. I came here in good faith. Don't let a disgruntled ex-employee muddy the waters. Emily's hand tightened on the counter. I left because I refused to help you hide fraudulent data. You said, and I quote, everybody does it. It's part of the game. Grant turned toward her slowly. Did you report it to the SEC? I tried, she said bitterly. They buried it. No one wanted to challenge a man with Damon's influence. Damon took a step closer, his tone condescending. Careful, Emily. Slander can still get you sued. Grant moved between them instantly. Enough. The single word cut through the room like thunder. You'll stay here until the storm passes, he told Damon coldly. But tomorrow we'll be reviewing every document from this merger, line by line. Damon smirked. Still the same Boy Scout. Grant didn't answer. He just looked at Emily. Thank you for the warning. Her eyes met his steady, unreadable. I didn't do it for you, she said quietly. I did it for the people who lose everything if this goes wrong. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Evelyn cleared her throat softly. Well, Perhaps some soup will calm us all down." She moved toward the stove, but Grant's voice stopped, Damon cold. "Touch my mother's kitchen, and I'll throw you back into the storm." Damon raised both hands again, mocking innocence. "Fine, fine. You always did have a hero complex, Grant." As he retreated toward a booth, Emily turned back to the counter, her pulse still racing. Grant joined her a moment later. "Is everything you said true?" "Yes." He studied her face. "You could have gone to another firm. Why disappear completely?" "I tried," she said. "But after the leak, no one would touch me. My name was on every Whisper Network list as high risk." "So you came here," he said softly, "to start over." Emily gave a small, tired smile. "Somewhere quiet, somewhere honest." Grant leaned on the counter, his expression unreadable. "You know, most people would have just taken the money and looked away." "I did once," she whispered. "Never again." Outside, lightning flashed against the snow, illuminating their faces through the window. "Emily," Grant began, but before he could finish, Damon's phone rang, loud in the stillness. He answered, muttering into it, then frowned. "The Nortec numbers just went live. Looks like the leak hit the press early." Grant's head snapped up. "What leak?" Damon turned the phone toward him, financial headlines already spreading across the screen. Whitaker Innovations in talks with Caldwell and Stone over controversial merger. Sources claim internal audit flagged irregularities. Grant's blood ran cold. Who leaked this? Damon's gaze slid toward Emily. "Who do you think?" Emily's voice was steady. "I haven't touched a trading terminal in years. But if the truth finally surfaced, maybe justice hasn't forgotten us after all." Grant turned from one to the other, realization dawning. This was more than coincidence. The storm, his mother, Emily Brooks, Damon Caldwell showing up out of nowhere. Fate wasn't finished yet. The diner fell into stunned silence. Outside, the storm screamed against the glass. Inside, 3 lives hung in the balance. Grant Whitaker's voice broke the quiet, first low, calm, and dangerous. "You're going to tell me exactly what's going on, Damon." Damon's expression hardened. "Grant, I don't owe you an explanation. We have a deal to finalize, not a courtroom drama." Grant stepped closer, the firelight catching the steel in his eyes. "You brought scandal into my company, my name, my mother's name. You'll explain now, or you'll regret ever stepping through that door." Damon gave a dry laugh. "Always the noble hero, aren't you? You really think the world runs on honesty? You're in business. Grant, you know better than that." Emily's voice cut through like ice. "Don't pretend you're teaching morality. You buried people for profit, Damon." He turned on her, smirk fading. "You always did have a talent for melodrama. Tell me, Emily, how's it feel being the tragic whistleblower? Living above a diner, serving coffee to truckers?" Emily's hands trembled, but her voice stayed calm. "I'd rather serve coffee with a clean conscience than drown in stolen money." Grant's gaze snapped to her. "What money?" She hesitated, then sighed. "You want the truth? Fine." She faced him fully. Caldwell and Stone used dummy accounts to inflate valuations before mergers, including the first attempt to acquire Nortec years ago. Damon's firm made millions from insider trades. When I discovered the pattern, he told me to keep quiet. When I didn't, my career was over." Grant turned slowly toward Damon, his voice dropping to a razor's edge. "Is that true?" Damon's jaw tightened. "You think I'd risk everything on her word?" "She's a disgraced analyst." "Disgraced," Emily echoed bitterly, "because you made sure of it." Grant slammed his palm against the counter. "Enough! Both of you!" The sound echoed like thunder. Evelyn flinched in the booth nearby, whispering a silent prayer. Grant took a steadying breath. "Emily, you have proof of this." "Not anymore," she said softly. "Everything was erased. Files, emails gone overnight." Damon's smile returned, thin and triumphant. "See? Just accusations. You're going to believe a woman who couldn't even hold on to a job?" Grant's gaze hardened. "I believe patterns. and yours are showing." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through the news alerts still lighting up the screen. Market manipulation, shell accounts, audit discrepancies. These are the same red flags from your past deals, Damon. Damon's eyes flashed. "You can't prove anything." Grant's voice went cold. "Maybe not yet, but I can suspend the merger, and I can cut every tie you have to Whitaker Innovations." "You destroy both our companies," Damon snapped. "I'd rather destroy my company than sell its soul," Grant said evenly. Emily watched him, something shifting quietly in her chest. For the first time, she saw the man behind the headlines, not the ruthless CEO, but the son of a woman who still believed in decency. Damon scoffed, grabbing his coat. "Fine, be the saint. But when this storm ends, don't expect to find many allies left. Investors don't back martyrs." He stormed toward the door, then hesitated, turning back to Emily. "You always were naive. I told you once the truth doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is who controls it." He yanked open the door, wind howling in, then slammed it shut behind him. The diner went still again, the sound of his footsteps fading into the blizzard. Grant stood motionless, his reflection flickering in the dark window. Finally, he spoke softly, almost to himself. "I built a company to stand for innovation and integrity. And somehow, I let snakes in through the front door." Evelyn rose, her hand gentle on his arm. "You can fix this, Grant. You always could when you listened to your heart." He nodded slowly, then looked at Emily. "You've been through hell because of men like him," he said quietly. "And I just nearly became one of them." Emily shook her head. "You still have a choice." A faint smile touched his lips. "I suppose I do." He picked up his phone, typing rapidly. "What are you doing?" she asked, canceling the merger and calling for a full internal audit. No deals, no excuses. Her eyes widened. "Do you know what that will cost you?" "Everything," he said simply. "But at least it'll be mine." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Only the hum of the generator filled the silence. Finally, Emily broke it with a quiet, almost trembling laugh. "You just declared war on half of Wall Street." Grant's expression softened. "Then it's about time someone did." He turned toward her fully, voice low, steady. "Emily, I don't know why you showed up in my life tonight, but I think it wasn't an accident." She met his gaze, her heart racing. Maybe not. Outside, the storm began to ease. The wind softened. Snow fell slower, gentler. Inside, something else thawed too. Evelyn watched from her booth, a knowing smile ghosting across her lips. Sometimes fate didn't need to shout. It only needed a storm and two people brave enough to face it. Morning came slowly, seeping through the blinds in soft ribbons of silver light. The storm had passed, leaving Burlington hushed, blanketed in snow. The world looked reborn, but inside the Maple Street diner, the weight of the night still lingered. Emily moved quietly between tables, cleaning up the traces of chaos. Half-burned candles, mugs gone cold, footprints fading into the melted slush by the door. Evelyn sat in her booth, hands wrapped around a cup of tea, watching her son. Grant was by the window, phone pressed to his ear, his expression sharp, composed the look of a man reclaiming control. "Yes," he said firmly, "effective immediately. Suspend the merger. Freeze all joint accounts tied to Caldwell and Stone." He paused, listening, then added, "If investors want answers, tell them the truth that Whitaker Innovations refuses to compromise its integrity." He ended the call, exhaling slowly. Emily placed a plate of toast beside him. "No sleep, I take it?" He gave a tired smile. "Hard to sleep when you just detonated your own company." "You did the right thing," she said quietly. "Right doesn't pay dividends," he replied wryly, "but maybe it buys peace of mind." Evelyn spoke softly from across the room. "It buys redemption, Grant, and sometimes that's worth more." He looked at her, then at Emily, and something unspoken passed between them. Damon will retaliate, Emily warned. He'll spin this however he needs to. Let him try, Grant said. I have the truth, and this time I'm not afraid to use it. Emily hesitated, then reached into her pocket. I still have one thing that might help. She pulled out a small flash drive, its casing worn and scuffed. Grant frowned. What's that? The one thing I kept, she said. Not files, just metadata. Timestamps, access logs, the trail they thought they erased. He stared at her, stunned. You've had this all along? I didn't know if I'd ever use it. I thought it was safer buried. But maybe it's time. Grant took the drive gently, as if it were something fragile. You realize what this means? It means, Emily said softly, we can prove what they did. Not just to me, but to hundreds of investors who never knew. Evelyn smiled faintly. Seems fate didn't just send a storm. It sent you a second chance. Grant met Emily's gaze. You could walk away now, he said quietly. You don't owe me this. She shook her head. No, but I owe it to the truth. Outside, sunlight broke through the clouds, casting a pale golden glow across the diner. Grant slipped the flash drive into his jacket pocket. When this is over, he said, I'll owe you more than I can ever repay. Don't make it sound like a debt, she replied, a soft smile tugging at her lips. Make it a promise. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Then it's a promise. The bell above the door jingled softly as Arthur Bennett appeared, bundled in his heavy coat. Morning, Emily, he called. Looks like the storm finally gave up. It did, she said, smiling. Come on in. The coffee's hot. Arthur glanced between Emily and Grant. New face? Grant stood, offering a polite handshake. Grant Whitaker. Arthur's eyes widened slightly. As in Whitaker Innovations? Formerly, Grant said with a faint grin. Long story. Well, any man who braves a Vermont blizzard deserves breakfast, Arthur said cheerfully. Sit tight, I'll tell Maggie I met someone important today. As he settled into his usual booth, Emily caught Grant's eye, trying not to laugh. He leaned closer, voice low. Does everyone in this town know each other? Pretty much, she said. It's how we survive the storms. Something in her words lingered not just about weather, but about life. Grant looked around the diner, the chipped coffee cups, the gleaming counter, the woman who had risked everything for honesty, and for the first time in years, he felt something like peace. He reached into his coat, pulled out his phone, and hit record. This is Grant Whitaker, he said quietly. Effective today, Whitaker Innovations will open a full internal investigation into all recent financial dealings. Transparency is not optional. It's who we are, or who we should have been all along. He ended the recording and looked at Emily. Care to help me draft the statement? She raised an eyebrow. Are you offering me a job, Mr. Whitaker? He smiled. I'm offering you a partnership. Evelyn beamed from her booth. Well, she said warmly, I suppose that's one way to start a new chapter. Outside, the sun rose higher, turning the snow to glistening glass. Inside, warmth returned not just from the coffee, but from the quiet, human kind that only comes after a storm is faced and survived. 6 months later, the snow had returned to Burlington, but this time it fell softly. No storm, no chaos, just quiet flakes drifting lazily through golden winter light. Inside Grant Whitaker's penthouse, Emily Brooks stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city glow beneath a pale sunset. Lake Champlain shimmered in shades of rose and amber. In her hands, a tablet. On the screen, a headline blazed across every news outlet. Caldwell and Stone executives indicted for securities fraud. Emily exhaled, a breath that felt like release. Behind her, Grant's reflection appeared in the glass. Quite the anniversary gift, he murmured, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. She smiled faintly. 6 months isn't an anniversary, Mr. Whitaker. It's just a milestone. He rested his chin on her shoulder, his voice warm against her skin. 6 months since a blizzard and a lost mother changed everything. She turned in his arms, teasing gently. Changed you mean? Maybe, he admitted with a crooked smile. Or maybe I just needed someone brave enough to call me out. Emily laughed softly. Your mother already had that job. Grant chuckled. She did until you showed up. He kissed her temple. I'd call that worth celebrating. The past 6 months had been a storm of a different kind: court cases, audits, interviews, and finally, redemption. The flash drive Emily had kept had proven devastating not only for Damon Caldwell, but for an entire web of corrupted firms. The SEC investigation this time had been relentless, thorough, and with Grant's full cooperation, justice was finally delivered. Whitaker Innovations took a hit at first. Stocks dropped, investors panicked, but when Grant publicly disclosed everything, transparency became his greatest strength. The company rebuilt from the inside out: new ethics board, new policies, new trust. Now, as Emily set down the tablet, the weight of those years seemed to fade. I still can't believe it's finally over, she whispered. Grant's hand brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. It's not about ending, Emily. It's about reclaiming. She looked up at him. Reclaiming what? He smiled softly. Your life, your name, our future. She blinked the last word, catching her off guard. Our future? He hesitated for the first time, then reached into his pocket. A small velvet box appeared in his hand. He opened it slowly, revealing an emerald ring, deep green, glowing under the fading sunlight. Emily's breath caught. Grant! He smiled, nervous for once in his life. Marry me. Her eyes widened, tears instantly blurring her vision. What did you just say? I said. He stepped closer, voice low, steady. Marry me. And before you overthink it, no, this isn't business strategy. This is me, finally smart enough to know what matters. Emily let out a shaky laugh. You don't even have a speech prepared? Oh, I do. His grin turned tender. I've had 6 months to write it. He took her hands. When I met you, you were the only person who ever looked at me and didn't see the CEO. You saw the man. And somehow, you still stayed. She laughed through her tears. Barely. He smiled. Exactly. That's how I know it's real. You challenged me, Emily. You made me better. And for the first time, I want forever to feel like this: honest, grounded, inconveniently human. She blinked away tears, whispering, This is sudden. 6 months of 14-hour days, rebuilding a company side by side. He said softly, I think that's enough rehearsal for a lifetime. She covered her mouth, shaking her head. Your mother's behind this, isn't she? Grant chuckled. She might have hinted that it was time. Emily laughed, tears spilling freely now. She's a romantic meddler. My mother, Grant said proudly, is never wrong, especially about what's good for me. She stared at the ring, not a diamond, but an emerald. Why green? She asked quietly. He smiled. Because you're not conventional. You're rare, brilliant. And the color matches your eyes when you're about to argue with me in a meeting. Emily's laugh trembled. That's the most you thing you've ever said. Grant tilted his head. So, what's the verdict, miss? Brooks? She gazed up at him, at the man who had gone from ruthless to redeemed, who'd risked his empire for the truth, and somehow found love in the wreckage. Then, slowly, she took the ring and slid it onto her finger. I accept, she whispered. The proposal, not the job offer. Grant exhaled a laugh, pure relief flooding his face. I wouldn't expect anything less. He swept her up, spinning her once, in sheer joy. Name your terms, future Mrs. Whitaker, she laughed, clinging to him. Oh no, I'm keeping Brooks professionally. You'll have to earn your name on my office door. Challenge accepted, he murmured, kissing her as the snow fell softly outside. 6 months later, again, December returned to Burlington, this time draped in light instead of shadow. Snow dusted the shores of Lake Champlain, glittering like diamonds beneath a pale morning sun. Under an arch woven from pine boughs and winter roses, Emily Brooks became Emily Brooks Whitaker. Her gown shimmered like frost in sunlight, simple yet breathtaking, elegant, pure. Grant stood opposite her, his expression softer than anyone had ever seen it. When he spoke, his voice carried easily through the crisp air. "When I first met you," he said, "you challenged everything I thought I knew about success, about worth, about what matters." He took a slow breath, his gaze never leaving hers. "You stood your ground when it would have been easier to run. You chose truth when lies would have been safer. I promised to be worthy of that courage every day of our lives together." Emily's eyes glistened. When she answered, her voice trembled, but every word was steady as heartbeat. "When I first met you," she said softly, "I thought you were the most arrogant man I'd ever encountered." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Grant smiled. "I wasn't wrong," she continued, "but I discovered that your arrogance was matched by your integrity once you found it again." Her tone gentled. "Your determination by your compassion, your ambition by your capacity for love." A hush fell as she finished. "I promise to remind you of those things whenever the world tries to make you forget them again." Grant's thumb brushed her hand, and when their lips met, snow began to fall. Not a storm, just a soft, endless drift of light, each flake catching the sunlight like glitter. Evelyn Whitaker dabbed at her eyes, radiant in silver blue. Her son was smiling again, truly smiling. Later, at the reception held at the newly restored Maple Street Diner, warm laughter filled the air. The worn red booths gleamed like new, polished chrome shining under strings of golden lights. "To second chances," Evelyn toasted, raising her glass. "And to blizzards," Grant added with a grin. "May they always lead us exactly where we need to be." Emily smiled, her voice soft. "Even if it's not where we planned to go." Evelyn beamed between them. "I knew it from the moment I saw you two together. No pretense, no games, just something real." "Mother," Grant warned playfully. "What?" she said, feigning innocence. "I'm allowed to be smug. You needed someone who saw the man behind the CEO. And you, my dear Emily, needed someone who would stand beside you, not in front of you." Before Emily could respond, the diner's bell jingled. Arthur Bennett stepped inside, a small wrapped package in hand. "Hope I'm not interrupting," he said, smiling. "Just heard the news and wanted to drop this off." "You're always welcome, Arthur," Emily said warmly. He handed her the gift, a hand-carved wooden snowflake, its details intricate and perfect. "Made it myself," Arthur said, "to remember how it all started." Emily's eyes softened. "It's beautiful. Thank you." As he left, Grant turned the carving over in his hand. "We should have a winter wedding every year," he teased. Emily laughed. "Come full circle in the diner?" "Why not?" Evelyn chimed in. "It would be uniquely yours." "I was joking," Emily protested. "I'm not," Grant said quietly. "Not about the winter part, at least. There's something poetic about finding our future in the same season that first brought us together." She met his gaze, and for a moment time folded in on itself. The diner, the storm, that first night of fear and warmth and fate. "December," she whispered. "Always December." Evelyn smiled knowingly. Then it settled. Later that evening, as music filled the diner and laughter spilled into the snowy night, Emily slipped away for a moment of quiet. She stood by the window, watching the snow drift softly across the glass. Evelyn joined her, radiant and calm. "Penny for your thoughts," Emily smiled. "Just thinking how different everything might have been if you hadn't gotten lost in that blizzard." Evelyn's eyes twinkled. Who says I was lost? Emily blinked. You mean... Evelyn's smile deepened, mischief glimmering in her eyes. A mother knows what her son needs, even when he doesn't. Let's just say I created an opportunity. Emily stared. You planned it, getting stranded at my diner? Planned, Evelyn mused, is such a strong word. Let's call it intuition. The taxi driver was very well compensated, I assure you. Emily gasped, half laughing, half incredulous. Evelyn Whittaker, you... Before she could finish, Grant appeared behind them, wrapping an arm around his new wife's waist. What are you two conspiring about? He asked, smiling. Your mother, Emily said sweetly, was just explaining how fate works. Ah, Grant murmured. So she finally confessed. Evelyn pretended innocence. I said no such thing. Grant kissed Emily's forehead. Don't worry, Mom. You meddle beautifully. Evelyn laughed, her eyes shining with love. Emily leaned into Grant's chest, her voice soft, full of wonder. Sometimes I think all of this happened because one woman refused to give up on her son. Or, Grant whispered, because one woman refused to stop believing in the truth. They looked at each other, and in that gaze, everything that mattered was already said. Outside, snow kept falling gentle, endless, forgiving. A story written in white about storms and second chances, and the kind of love that only grows when two hearts decide to stay.